Some stories are harder to tell than others, and today is one of those moments. We gather with heavy hearts to remember the celebrities who once lit up our screens and lives, but have now left us forever. As we honor their lives and say goodbye, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so their stories continue to be remembered. Tina Packer, the celebrated British actress, director, and educator who played a pivotal role in bringing Shakespearean theater to modern audiences, died at the age of 87. Known for her commanding stage presence and deep commitment to classical theater, Packer spent decades shaping the landscape of Shakespeare performance in both Britain and the United States. Her legacy lives on through generations of actors and audiences who experienced Shakespeare through the vibrant theatrical world she helped create. Tina Packer was born in 1938 in England and grew up in a family that valued literature, education, and intellectual curiosity. From a young age, she showed a natural inclination toward performance and storytelling. Theater, particularly the works of William Shakespeare, fascinated her early on. While many actors admired Shakespeare from a distance, Packer developed an unusually personal relationship with the playwright's work. She believed that Shakespeare's plays were living texts that should be explored with curiosity, emotional truth, and a sense of discovery, rather than treated as untouchable literary monuments. Her formal acting training began at the prestigious Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London, one of the most respected drama schools in the world. RADA shaped many legendary performers, and Packer quickly distinguished herself as a disciplined and thoughtful actor. Her education there grounded her in classical performance techniques while also encouraging intellectual engagement with dramatic texts. After graduating, Packer began performing with the renowned Royal Shakespeare Company, one of the world's most influential theater organizations dedicated to Shakespeare and classical drama. At the RSC, she worked alongside some of the greatest actors and directors of the era, gaining invaluable experience in the demanding world of professional theater. Performing Shakespeare requires not only emotional range, but also a precise command of language, rhythm, and movement, skills that Packer developed with remarkable dedication. During her time with the Royal Shakespeare Company, she played numerous roles in productions that traveled across the United Kingdom and internationally. These performances deepened her understanding of Shakespeare's characters and themes, but they also sparked a new ambition in her. Rather than simply performing within established institutions, Packer began to imagine a theater company that would explore Shakespeare in a more intimate, experimental way. That vision became reality in 1978 when Packer co-founded Shakespeare Company in Lenox, Massachusetts. The company was created alongside actor and director Kristen Linklater, whose pioneering voice training methods aligned with Packer's philosophy of actor-centered Shakespeare performance. At the time, the idea of founding a Shakespeare Company in rural Massachusetts might have seemed ambitious, but Packer believed that audiences everywhere could connect with Shakespeare if the plays were presented with emotional honesty and clarity. Shakespeare Company quickly became one of the most respected classical theater institutions in the United States. Under Packer's leadership, the company produced dozens of Shakespeare plays along with other classical and contemporary works. What set the theater apart was its focus on actor training and text exploration. Packer believed that Shakespeare's language should feel alive and accessible, not distant or overly formal. Her productions often emphasized the psychological depth of characters and the human relationships at the heart of the plays. Beyond directing and producing, Packer was also a powerful performer in her own right. She played many major roles in Shakespeare's canon over the years, including characters traditionally associated with immense emotional complexity. Among her most memorable performances were roles in plays like King Lear, The Merchant of Venice, and Antony and Cleopatra. Her portrayals were known for their emotional intelligence and intellectual depth, reflecting her lifelong study of Shakespeare's language and themes. One of Packer's most remarkable contributions to theater was her reinterpretation of Shakespeare's tragic characters. Later in her career, she gained widespread attention for performing the title role in King Lear, a role historically played almost exclusively by male actors. Her performance challenged long-standing traditions and demonstrated that Shakespeare's characters could transcend conventional casting boundaries. Packer's interpretation of Lear brought a fresh perspective to the tragedy, highlighting themes of vulnerability, power, aging, and family relationships in ways that resonated deeply with contemporary audiences. The performance became an important moment in discussions about gender and classical theater casting. In addition to her stage work, Packer was deeply committed to education. She believed that Shakespeare could transform how people think about language, empathy, and human experience. Through Shakespeare Company, she helped create extensive training programs for actors, teachers, and students. These workshops encouraged participants to engage with Shakespeare not just intellectually, but physically and emotionally. Her teaching methods emphasized vocal freedom, emotional authenticity, and an intimate connection with the text. Many actors and educators who trained under her later carried those techniques into classrooms and theaters around the world, spreading her influence far beyond the stage in Lenox. Packer also contributed to scholarship and public understanding of Shakespeare. She wrote and spoke extensively about the plays, offering insights into character psychology, language, and performance. Her book, Women of Will, explored Shakespeare's female characters across the canon, examining how the playwright's portrayal of women evolved throughout his career. The project eventually became a touring performance piece in which Packer herself appeared on stage, guiding audiences through Shakespeare's depiction of women from early comedies to later tragedies. Throughout her life, Packer maintained a rare combination of artistic authority and intellectual curiosity. Even in her later years, she continued directing, teaching, and developing theatrical projects. Her passion for Shakespeare never diminished. She remained fascinated by the endless possibilities within the plays. Her work helped break down the misconception that Shakespeare is difficult or inaccessible. Instead, she showed that when actors fully inhabit the language and emotions of the text, the plays can feel immediate and deeply human. For thousands of audience members who attended Shakespeare Company productions over the decades, her vision transformed the experience of classical theater. Beyond her professional achievements, Packer was admired for her mentorship and leadership. Many actors described her as both demanding and deeply supportive, a director who pushed performers to reach emotional truth while also nurturing their artistic growth. Her influence can be seen in the continued success of Shakespeare Company, which remains one of the most important Shakespeare-focused theater companies in North America. The institution stands as a lasting testament to her belief that great theater should combine rigorous scholarship with emotional vitality. Tina Packer's death at 87 marks the end of an extraordinary life devoted to the power of language, performance, and storytelling. Yet her impact continues through the actors she trained, the productions she created, and the audiences who discovered Shakespeare through her work. In the world of theater, few figures leave behind both a creative legacy and an institutional one. Packer achieved both. She was not only an accomplished actress, but also a visionary leader who reshaped how Shakespeare could be performed, taught, and understood. Her life's work demonstrated that classical theater is not a relic of the past, but a living art form capable of evolving with each generation. Through her dedication, Tina Packer ensured that Shakespeare's plays would continue to speak with urgency, beauty, and humanity long into the future.
Marcus Gilbert, the British film and television actor known for his striking screen presence and memorable roles in adventure and fantasy films of the 1980s and 1990s, died at the age of 67. With a career that spans several decades, Gilbert became recognizable to audiences through his performances in cult classics, historical adventures, and television dramas. While he never pursued the spotlight of Hollywood's superstardom, his work left a lasting impression on fans of genre cinema and British television alike. Marcus Gilbert was born in England in 1957 and grew up during a time when British theatre and television were experiencing significant cultural influence worldwide. As a young man, he developed a passion for acting and storytelling, drawn to the emotional depth and imaginative possibilities of performance. Like many British actors of his generation, Gilbert's early interest in acting was shaped by exposure to classical theatre, film, and the long tradition of British dramatic storytelling. His professional training came at the respected Mount View Academy of Theatre Arts, one of the United Kingdom's most recognized institutions for actor training. At Mount View, Gilbert honed the technical and emotional skills required for stage and screen acting. The school's emphasis on discipline, voice control, and character study helped prepare him for the demanding and competitive entertainment industry. After completing his training, Gilbert began working in theater and television, gradually building a reputation as a capable and versatile performer. British television in the late 20th century offered many opportunities for actors to appear in drama series, historical productions, and literary adaptations. Gilbert took advantage of these opportunities, appearing in a range of projects that allowed him to refine his craft and develop a strong on-screen presence. One of his most recognized early film appearances came in Rambo 3, the third installment in the iconic action franchise starring Sylvester Stallone. In the film, Gilbert played the character Massoud, an Afghan resistance fighter who assists the protagonist during the conflict against Soviet forces. The role introduced Gilbert to international audiences and demonstrated his ability to hold his own alongside major Hollywood stars. Though not the central figure of the film, Gilbert's portrayal contributed to the emotional grounding of the story. His character represented courage, resilience, and loyalty in the midst of war, and his performance helped add authenticity to the film's depiction of conflict and resistance. For many viewers, Rambo 3 became their first introduction to Marcus Gilbert. However, it was his role in the cult fantasy film Army of Darkness that would later become one of the most beloved parts of his career. Directed by Sam Raimi, the film served as the third installment in the popular Evil Dead franchise and starred Bruce Campbell as the time-traveling hero Ash Williams. In Army of Darkness, Gilbert portrayed Lord Arthur, a medieval nobleman who initially distrusts the film's unconventional hero before eventually becoming an ally in the battle against supernatural forces. The role allowed Gilbert to showcase both dramatic authority and subtle comedic timing, as the film blended horror, fantasy, and humor in Raimi's distinctive style. Although the film received mixed reviews upon its initial release, it eventually developed a devoted fan following. Over the years, Army of Darkness became a cult classic, celebrated for its imaginative storytelling, memorable dialogue, and unique tone. Gilbert's performance as Lord Arthur remains one of the film's most recognizable supporting roles, contributing to the movie's enduring appeal among genre fans. Beyond these notable films, Marcus Gilbert also maintained a steady presence on British television. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, he appeared in a variety of drama series and television productions that showcased his range as an actor. British television has long been known for producing high-quality historical dramas and literary adaptations, and Gilbert frequently found roles in productions that required strong classical acting skills. These television roles allowed him to portray a wide range of characters, from aristocrats and soldiers to complex supporting figures in dramatic narratives. While he may not have become a household name, his consistent work demonstrated the reliability and professionalism that casting directors valued. One of Gilbert's strengths as an actor was his physical presence. Tall, charismatic, and commanding on screen, he often portrayed characters with authority or nobility. At the same time, he had the ability to bring warmth and humanity to his roles, ensuring that even supporting characters felt fully realized rather than one-dimensional. Actors like Gilbert often form the backbone of film and television productions. While leading stars attract the most public attention, supporting actors provide depth, structure, and credibility to the story. Gilbert's performances consistently fulfilled that role, strengthening the productions he was a part of. Throughout his career, Gilbert balanced work in film, television, and theater. The theater remained an important part of his artistic life, offering opportunities to perform live before audiences and explore complex characters in greater depth. British actors frequently move between stage and screen, and Gilbert followed that tradition by maintaining connections to both mediums. Colleagues who worked with him often described him as professional, dedicated, and collaborative. Acting is an inherently collective art form, requiring performers to work closely with directors, writers, and fellow actors. Gilbert's reputation within the industry reflected his respect for that collaborative process. Despite the challenges of maintaining a long career in the entertainment industry, Gilbert remained active in the profession for many years. The life of a working actor often involves navigating fluctuating opportunities, changing trends, and the unpredictability of the industry. Yet, Gilbert's continued presence across decades demonstrated his adaptability and commitment to his craft. His work in films like Rambo 3 and Army of Darkness ensured that his performances would continue to be discovered by new generations of viewers. Both films remain widely watched and discussed among fans of action and fantasy cinema. For audiences who grew up with those movies, Gilbert's characters remain memorable parts of the stories. In the modern era of streaming and digital media, cult films have gained renewed visibility, allowing younger viewers to explore classic genre cinema from previous decades. As a result, Gilbert's performances continue to find appreciation long after their original release. Marcus Gilbert's passing at 67 marks the loss of a talented actor whose contributions enriched both film and television. While he may not have pursued celebrity status, his work demonstrated the importance of skilled character actors within the entertainment industry. His career serves as a reminder that memorable performances are not limited to leading roles. Supporting actors often provide the emotional and narrative foundation that allows stories to resonate with audiences. Through dedication, talent, and professionalism, Gilbert built a body of work that remains part of cinematic and television history. For fans of fantasy adventure films, classic action cinema, and British drama, Marcus Gilbert will be remembered as a performer who brought intelligence, strength, and authenticity to every role he played. His performances continue to live on through the films and shows that captured his talent, ensuring that his contribution to storytelling will not be forgotten.
Roger Allers, the American filmmaker, animator, and storyteller best known for co-directing one of the most beloved animated films of all time, died at the age of 76. A visionary artist with a deep passion for visual storytelling, Allers played a central role in shaping the golden era of modern animation, most notably through his work on The Lion King. His contributions to animation extended far beyond a single film, influencing both the creative direction of animated storytelling and the careers of countless artists within the industry. Roger Allers was born in 1949 in Rye, New York, in the United States. From an early age, he displayed a fascination with drawing, illustration, and storytelling. Like many future animators, he spent much of his childhood sketching characters and imagining worlds on paper. This creative curiosity eventually led him toward animation, a field that allowed him to combine visual art, narrative, and performance into a single medium. Allers pursued his artistic education at California Institute of the Arts, often known as CalArts, one of the most influential institutions in the development of modern animation. The school had strong ties to the Walt Disney Company and had become a training ground for many of the animators who would later lead Disney's animation renaissance in the late 20th century. At CalArts, Allers refined his drawing skills while also studying story structure, character development, and cinematic storytelling. Before entering the Hollywood animation industry, Allers traveled extensively and worked on international animation projects. These experiences exposed him to a variety of artistic traditions and storytelling styles. The influence of global art, culture, and mythology would later become visible in his creative work, particularly in the visual richness and thematic depth of the films he helped shape. Allers eventually joined Walt Disney Animation Studios during a transformative period in the studio's history. The 1980s and 1990s marked a major revival of Disney animation, often referred to as the Disney Renaissance. During this time, the studio produced a series of critically acclaimed and commercially successful films that redefined animated storytelling for a new generation. Allers contributed to several of these productions in various creative roles. Early in his Disney career, he worked as a storyboard artist and story developer, helping shape narrative structure and visual sequences before animation began.
Storyboarding is one of the most important stages in animated filmmaking, as it determines pacing, character emotion, and cinematic flow. One of his early contributions came on Beauty and the Beast, a landmark Disney production that became the first animated film ever nominated for the Academy Award for Best Picture. His involvement in projects like this helped establish him as a skilled storyteller with a strong visual imagination. However, Allers' most defining career achievement came with The Lion King, which he co-directed alongside Rob Minkoff. At the time of its production, the film was considered something of a risk for Disney. Unlike many previous animated films, it was not based on a well-known fairy tale or existing literary property. Instead, it was an original story inspired by themes of family, destiny, and the natural cycle of life. Set against the vast landscapes of the African savanna, The Lion King tells the story of Simba, a young lion prince who must overcome tragedy and self-doubt to reclaim his place as king. The film combined powerful storytelling with groundbreaking animation, memorable characters, and an unforgettable musical score, featuring songs by Elton John and lyrics by Tim Rice. Under Allers' creative leadership, the film balanced emotional depth with humor and spectacle. He helped shape the film's narrative tone, emphasizing universal themes such as responsibility, loss, identity, and personal growth. These themes resonated strongly with audiences of all ages. When The Lion King premiered in 1994, it became an immediate global phenomenon. The film was both a critical and commercial success, eventually becoming one of the highest-grossing animated films of its time. It also won multiple Academy Awards for its music and score, including the Oscar for Original Score awarded to Hans Zimmer. The film's cultural impact extended far beyond its theatrical release. It inspired a hugely successful Broadway adaptation, theme park attractions, and multiple sequels and spin-offs. Today, The Lion King remains one of Disney's most enduring and influential works, watched and loved by generations of viewers. Following the massive success of The Lion King, Allers continued working in animation as both a director and creative contributor. He later directed the animated feature Open Season for Sony Pictures Animation. The film told the story of unlikely animal friends navigating life in the wilderness and introduced new comedic characters to family audiences. While Open Season had a lighter tone compared to the epic drama of The Lion King, it demonstrated Allers' versatility as a filmmaker, capable of working across different styles of animated storytelling. Beyond feature films, Allers also remained deeply connected to the artistic side of animation. He continued working on story development, mentoring younger artists, and participating in creative projects that explored the visual possibilities of animation. Many animators who worked with him described him as a thoughtful and collaborative director who valued creativity and experimentation. In addition to film, Allers also contributed to theatrical storytelling. He helped develop stage adaptations and other narrative projects inspired by animation, reflecting his belief that stories could evolve across multiple forms of media. Throughout his career, Allers was admired not only for his artistic talent, but also for his humility and dedication to craft. The animation industry often involves large collaborative teams, and directors must coordinate artists, writers, animators, musicians, and technicians. Colleagues frequently praised Allers for fostering an environment where creative ideas could flourish. His storytelling philosophy emphasized emotional authenticity and visual poetry. Rather than relying solely on spectacle, he believed animated films should communicate meaningful themes and genuine human emotion. This approach helped elevate animation as a serious storytelling medium rather than simply entertainment for children. Roger Allers' death at 76 marks the loss of one of the key creative figures behind one of animation's most important eras. Through his work on The Lion King and other projects, he helped redefine what animated films could achieve artistically and emotionally. His influence continues to be felt across the animation industry. Filmmakers, animators, and storytellers around the world still draw inspiration from the visual storytelling techniques and narrative depth he helped bring to the screen. For millions of viewers, the emotional journey of Simba in The Lion King remains one of the most powerful stories ever told in animation. That legacy stands as a testament to Roger Allers' extraordinary ability to combine art, music, and storytelling into a cinematic experience that continues to resonate decades later.
Through his imagination and dedication, Roger Allers helped shape the modern language of animated film. His work ensured that stories told through animation could be as profound, moving, and timeless as any live-action cinema.
Robert Carradine, the American actor best known for his memorable roles in comedy films, television series, and for being part of one of Hollywood's most recognizable acting dynasties, died at the age of 71. Over the course of a career spanning more than 5 decades, Carradine appeared in dozens of films and television projects, building a reputation as a versatile and dependable performer. Though he rarely occupied the position of a traditional Hollywood leading man, he became widely known for characters that combined intelligence, vulnerability, and humor. His role as Louis Skolnick in the popular 1984 comedy Revenge of the Nerds remains one of the most iconic portrayals of an underdog character in American cinema. Robert Reed Carradine was born on March 24, 1954 in Hollywood, California, into a family where acting was not just a profession, but a legacy. His father, John Carradine, was a highly respected performer whose career extended across stage, radio, film, and television. John Carradine was known for his distinctive voice and dramatic presence, appearing in hundreds of productions over several decades. Growing up with such an influential figure in the entertainment industry meant that Robert was exposed to filmmaking and performance from an early age. The Carradine family itself would eventually become one of the most recognized acting families in American entertainment. Robert's half-brothers, David Carradine and Keith Carradine, both achieved considerable success in film and television. David Carradine became internationally famous for his starring role in the television series Kung Fu, while Keith Carradine developed a respected career as both an actor and musician. Growing up in this environment meant that Robert Carradine experienced both the opportunities and the pressures associated with a family legacy in Hollywood. Acting was part of everyday life, but establishing his own identity within such a prominent family required determination and individuality. Rather than simply following the exact path of his brothers, Robert carved out his own niche within the industry. Carradine spent part of his youth traveling with his father while John Carradine performed in theater productions. These experiences allowed him to observe the discipline and dedication required to succeed as an actor. Watching stage performances and spending time around theater professionals gave him an early appreciation for storytelling, performance, and the craft of acting. Like many aspiring actors of his generation, Carradine entered the industry at a time when American cinema was undergoing dramatic change. The late 1960s and early 1970s saw the emergence of what is often referred to as the New Hollywood era. Filmmakers were experimenting with more realistic storytelling, unconventional characters, and socially relevant themes. This creative environment allowed young actors to explore a wide range of roles. Carradine began appearing in film and television during the early 1970s, gradually building experience through smaller roles. These early appearances allowed him to develop his on-screen presence while learning the practical aspects of filmmaking. Unlike actors who achieve instant fame, Carradine's career developed steadily over time through consistent work. One of his early notable film appearances came in The Long Riders, directed by Walter Hill. The film told the story of the infamous Jesse James gang and was unique for its casting concept. Real-life sets of brothers portrayed the historical outlaw brothers in the film. In addition to the Carradines, the movie also featured other acting siblings, creating a sense of authenticity within the narrative. In The Long Riders, Robert Carradine appeared alongside his brothers David and Keith Carradine. The film received praise for its realistic portrayal of the American West and its atmospheric cinematography. Robert's participation in the project highlighted the natural chemistry between the Carradine brothers and demonstrated his ability to contribute meaningfully to ensemble storytelling. Despite his early dramatic roles, Carradine's most famous performance would ultimately come from an entirely different genre, comedy. In 1984, he starred in Revenge of the Nerds, a film that would become one of the most recognizable comedies of the decade. In the movie, Carradine played Louis Skolnick, a socially awkward but brilliant college student who becomes the leader of a group of marginalized students commonly labeled as nerds. The story revolves around the group's struggle to gain acceptance and respect at their university, where they are constantly bullied and mocked by the popular fraternity athletes. What made Carradine's performance stand out was the sincerity he brought to the character. Rather than portraying Lewis as a purely comedic caricature, Carradine emphasized the character's intelligence, determination, and emotional vulnerability. This approach helped transform Louis Skolnick into a sympathetic and relatable figure for audiences. The film's comedic premise, combined with its message about individuality and self-acceptance, resonated strongly with viewers. During the 1980s, American culture often celebrated athleticism and popularity in school settings. Revenge of the Nerds offered a humorous but meaningful reversal of that narrative, suggesting that intelligence and creativity could be sources of pride rather than embarrassment. The film's success led to several sequels, including Revenge of the Nerds 2: Nerds in Paradise, which continued the story of the characters introduced in the original movie. Carradine reprised his role as Louis Skolnick in multiple installments of the franchise, further cementing the character's place in pop culture. While the Nerds films became the defining project of his career, Carradine continued working in a wide range of film and television productions. Like many character actors, he developed a reputation for reliability and versatility. Directors often cast him in roles that required a combination of humor, intelligence, and relatability. Television also played a significant role in Carradine's career. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, he appeared in numerous series, television movies, and guest roles. These projects allowed him to remain a familiar presence for audiences while continuing to explore different types of characters. One of his most unexpected career turns when he hosted the reality competition series The Mole. The show involved contestants completing challenges while attempting to identify a hidden saboteur among them. Carradine's calm demeanor and engaging personality made him an effective host, introducing him to a new generation of viewers. Beyond his professional work, Carradine was also known for his creative interests outside acting. He explored music and writing, demonstrating the same curiosity and creativity that characterized his film career. Artists often pursue multiple forms of expression, and Carradine's willingness to experiment reflected his broader artistic sensibilities. Throughout his life, the Carradine family remained an important part of his personal and professional identity. The family's contributions to film and television spanned multiple generations, and Robert's career added another chapter to that legacy. Yet he also maintained his individuality as a performer, often selecting roles that differed from those typically associated with his brothers. The entertainment industry can be unpredictable, with careers rising and falling depending on trends, audience tastes, and studio decisions. Carradine's ability to remain active in film and television across decades demonstrated both adaptability and perseverance. While he did not always appear in high-profile productions, he consistently worked and maintained a respected reputation among colleagues. In later years, Carradine also became a popular guest at fan conventions and film festivals, particularly those celebrating classic 1980s cinema. Many fans who grew up watching Revenge of the Nerds expressed appreciation for the character he brought to life. These events allowed Carradine to connect directly with audiences who had followed his work for decades. The legacy of Revenge of the Nerds itself has evolved over time. While some aspects of the film have been re-examined through modern cultural perspectives, its influence on popular culture remains undeniable. The film helped reshape how nerd culture was portrayed in entertainment, paving the way for later stories that celebrated intelligence, technology, and individuality. Characters like Louis Skolnick helped inspire a broader shift in how audiences perceived intellectual identity. In the decades that followed, many films and television series embraced characters who were scientists, programmers, engineers, or socially unconventional individuals. Carradine's portrayal contributed to this cultural shift. Robert Carradine's death at the age of 71 marks the passing of an actor whose work formed an important part of American film and television history. His performances, particularly in Revenge of the Nerds, remain widely recognized and continue to be rediscovered by new generations of viewers through streaming platforms and digital media. Even though he was part of a legendary acting family, Carradine's career stands on its own merits. His ability to bring warmth, humor, and authenticity to his roles ensured that audiences remembered the characters he portrayed. In an industry often focused on celebrity and star power, Carradine represented a different kind of success: the steady, enduring career of a working actor who contributed meaningfully to every project he joined. These performers formed the backbone of film and television storytelling, providing depth and realism that allowed narratives to resonate with audiences. For fans of 1980s cinema, comedy films, and classic Hollywood acting families, Robert Carradine will be remembered as a performer who brought intelligence, sincerity, and humor to the screen. His work remains preserved in the films and television programs that continue to entertain viewers around the world. Through those performances, Robert Carradine's legacy lives on, not only as a member of a famous acting family, but as an actor whose characters captured the spirit of resilience, individuality, and the quiet triumph of the underdog.
Adam Sandler was born on September 9, 1966, in Brooklyn, New York, a borough known for producing a long list of entertainers, comedians, and cultural personalities. His father, Stanley Sandler, worked as an electrical engineer, while his mother, Judith Sandler, was a nursery school teacher. The family moved to Manchester, New Hampshire when Adam was still young, and it was there that much of his childhood took shape. At first glance, nothing about Sandler's early life suggested he would eventually become one of the most recognizable comedy actors in Hollywood. Friends from school often described him as quiet and slightly awkward, not necessarily the class clown, but someone who occasionally delivered strange jokes or exaggerated voices that would catch people off guard. It was during his teenage years that Sandler began experimenting with comedy more seriously. Encouraged by his brother, he tried performing stand-up routines in small Boston comedy clubs. These early appearances were far from glamorous. Comedy clubs in the 1980s were competitive environments where young performers often struggled to get attention from audiences. Sandler's style was unusual even then. Instead of relying entirely on carefully structured punchlines, he often performed songs with a guitar, used exaggerated character voices, and leaned heavily on absurd or juvenile humor. Some audiences laughed, others seemed confused. The mixed reaction would later become a defining feature of Sandler's career. After graduating from high school, Sandler attended New York University and studied at the Tisch School of the Arts. During this period, he continued refining his comedic style, while performing stand-up whenever possible. New York's comedy scene exposed him to many other aspiring performers, each trying to develop a distinctive voice in a crowded industry. Sandler's performances remained unconventional, sometimes built around intentionally silly songs or odd character impressions rather than traditional joke structure. In 1988, he graduated with a degree in fine arts and began looking for opportunities in television and film. One of his earliest movie appearances came in Going Overboard. The film was a low-budget comedy about a struggling stand-up comedian working on a cruise ship. Sandler played the central character, but the film itself was widely criticized for its weak writing and amateur production quality. It failed to make a meaningful impact at the box office and is often cited as one of the least impressive starting points for a future major film star. Even many Sandler fans later admitted the film was difficult to defend. Despite this unremarkable beginning, Sandler continued performing stand-up and making connections within the entertainment industry. A turning point came when comedian Dennis Miller noticed his work and recommended him to producers at Saturday Night Live. Sandler joined the show in 1990 as a writer before becoming a cast member the following year. Saturday Night Live had long served as a launching platform for comedians, but it was also a place where performers faced intense pressure to produce memorable material every week. Sandler quickly became known for his unusual sketches and comedic songs. Characters like Opera Man and musical performances such as the Chanukah song attracted attention from viewers. While these sketches gained popularity with audiences, critics frequently complained that Sandler's humor relied heavily on childish voices and repetitive jokes. During the early 1990s, Sandler became closely associated with fellow cast members such as Chris Farley, David Spade, and Chris Rock. Together, they represented a younger generation of comedians attempting to reshape the show's style. While their sketches attracted strong fan support, not everyone appreciated their approach. Some television critics argued that the humor during this period leaned too heavily on crude jokes and exaggerated characters. In 1995, Sandler and Chris Farley were unexpectedly dismissed from Saturday Night Live. The decision shocked many viewers and even some members of the show's staff. Sandler later admitted that the firing hurt deeply, especially because the show had been his primary platform for recognition. However, the setback would ironically push him toward the film career that ultimately defined his public image. Shortly after leaving Saturday Night Live, Sandler starred in Billy Madison. In the movie, he played the immature son of a wealthy businessman who must repeat grades in school to prove he deserves to inherit the family company. The film relied heavily on slapstick comedy, absurd dialogue, and intentionally ridiculous situations. Critics overwhelmingly criticized the film, calling it childish and poorly written. However, audiences responded differently. The movie performed well financially and gradually developed a cult following among younger viewers. The success of Billy Madison was followed by Happy Gilmore, another comedy built around an unlikely protagonist. In this film, Sandler played an aggressive hockey player who discovers he has a talent for golf. The premise was intentionally absurd, and the film included numerous scenes of exaggerated physical comedy. Critics again gave mixed or negative reviews, but audiences embraced the movie's chaotic energy. By the late 1990s, Sandler had established himself as a reliable box office draw. Films such as The Waterboy and Big Daddy performed extremely well financially. The pattern became clear. Critics frequently dismissed the films as lowbrow or repetitive, yet audiences continued to watch them in large numbers. During this time, Sandler also began forming a tight circle of collaborators. Actors like Rob Schneider, Kevin James, and David Spade appeared in multiple Sandler projects. This recurring group of friends became a recognizable feature of his films. Supporters saw it as a sense of comedic camaraderie, while critics often described it as evidence that Sandler's films relied on familiar formulas rather than creative innovation. In 1999, Sandler founded the production company Happy Madison Productions. The company would go on to produce many of his films, giving him significant control over casting, scripts, and creative decisions. This independence allowed Sandler to pursue projects without relying heavily on outside studio direction. However, it also intensified criticism that his films prioritized easy commercial success over artistic ambition. Throughout the early 2000s, Sandler continued releasing a steady stream of comedies. Movies such as Mr. Deeds, Anger Management, and 50 First Dates kept him firmly established as one of Hollywood's most recognizable comedic actors. Yet the same criticism followed him repeatedly. Reviewers often argued that his films recycled similar jokes, characters, and storylines. Despite the criticism, Sandler occasionally demonstrated an ability to deliver strong, dramatic performances. In Punch Drunk Love, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, Sandler portrayed a lonely and emotionally unstable man struggling with anger and isolation. The performance surprised many critics, who previously dismissed him as a purely comedic actor. Even with moments like this, Sandler's career continued to generate debate. Some observers believed he had genuine acting talent that was rarely fully used. Others argued that his consistent reliance on broad comedy and formulaic storytelling limited his artistic reputation. By the late 2000s and early 2010s, criticism of Sandler's films became louder. Movies such as Jack and Jill were widely mocked by critics and audiences alike. The film became infamous for winning numerous Golden Raspberry Awards, which highlight the worst films and performances of the year. Despite this, Sandler remained commercially successful. His films continued attracting viewers, and he eventually signed a major production deal with Netflix, allowing him to produce and release films directly through the streaming platform. The partnership ensured that his movies would reach massive global audiences regardless of critical reception.
Years later, Sandler once again surprised critics with his intense performance in Uncut Gems, portraying a reckless New York jeweler consumed by gambling addiction. The role earned widespread praise and reminded audiences that Sandler possessed far greater dramatic ability than many of his comedies suggested. Yet, the contradiction at the center of Sandler's career remains unchanged. Over decades in Hollywood, he has become one of the most commercially successful comedians in film history, while simultaneously remaining one of its most criticized. His movies are frequently mocked by reviewers, yet consistently watched by millions of viewers worldwide. Whether seen as a misunderstood entertainer or as a comedian who rarely challenges himself creatively, Adam Sandler has built a career defined by this unusual balance between popularity and criticism.
By the late 2000s, the trajectory of Adam Sandler's career had become increasingly difficult to categorize. On one hand, he remained one of the most financially reliable names in comedy. Studios understood that his movies, even those criticized heavily by reviewers, often generated strong box office returns or large viewing numbers. On the other hand, the gap between audience popularity and critical reception seemed to grow wider with each new release. Film critics increasingly described Sandler's projects as repetitive, arguing that many followed nearly identical formulas built around exaggerated characters, crude humor, and loosely constructed plots. Throughout the late 2000s, Sandler continued releasing films that performed well commercially while drawing criticism for their creative quality. One example was Grown Ups, which reunited Sandler with fellow comedians including Kevin James, Chris Rock, David Spade, and Rob Schneider. The film revolved around childhood friends reconnecting years after their basketball coach's death. Critics dismissed the movie as lazy and poorly written, yet it earned hundreds of millions of dollars worldwide and later spawned a sequel. This pattern had become familiar. Sandler's films were frequently criticized for lacking originality, yet they consistently found audiences willing to watch them. Some analysts suggested that Sandler understood exactly how to appeal to viewers who simply wanted easygoing, light entertainment, rather than carefully crafted cinematic storytelling. However, the criticism surrounding Sandler's work reached an especially intense level in 2011 with the release of Jack and Jill. In the film, Sandler played both Jack Sadelstein, a successful advertising executive, and Jill, his loud and socially awkward twin sister. The concept was built almost entirely around the comedic device of Sandler performing in dual roles. Critics reacted harshly. Many described the film as one of the weakest studio comedies in years, criticizing its writing, humor, and reliance on exaggerated stereotypes. The film's reputation worsened when it swept the Golden Raspberry Awards, an event dedicated to highlighting the worst performances and films in Hollywood. Jack and Jill became the first movie to win every major category in the awards' history, including Worst Actor, Worst Actress, Worst Screen Couple, and Worst Picture. For many critics, the film became symbolic of everything they disliked about Sandler's comedic approach. Despite the embarrassment of such criticism, the movie still made a significant profit. That paradox illustrated a recurring truth about Sandler's career. Negative reviews rarely stopped audiences from watching his films. Studios recognized that Sandler's name alone could attract viewers, particularly for broad comedies aimed at mass audiences. During this period, Sandler's production company, Happy Madison Productions, remained central to his work. The company produced many of his projects, as well as films starring his friends and collaborators. Critics sometimes accuse the company of functioning less like a traditional creative studio and more like a platform for Sandler and his circle to produce loosely structured comedy projects. Yet even as criticism mounted, Sandler occasionally delivered performances that forced critics to reconsider their assumptions about his abilities. One such moment came earlier in his career with Punch Drunk Love, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. The film cast Sandler as Barry Egan, a lonely and emotionally volatile man struggling with anger, anxiety, and romantic insecurity. The role demanded subtle emotional expression rather than exaggerated comedic behavior. Critics praised Sandler's performance in Punch Drunk Love, describing it as surprisingly vulnerable and complex. Some reviewers even suggested that Sandler possessed dramatic talent that had rarely been used effectively in his comedy projects. Yet, after the film's release, he returned primarily to broad comedic roles rather than pursuing more dramatic work. The question of Sandler's untapped potential became a recurring topic among film critics and industry observers. Many believed that he possessed genuine acting ability, but preferred to make simpler, more commercially predictable films instead. Others argued that Sandler intentionally avoided challenging roles because his existing formula was financially successful. Another major shift in Sandler's career came when he entered into a major partnership with Netflix. In 2014, Sandler signed a deal with the streaming service to produce and star in multiple original films. At the time, this arrangement was unusual for a major Hollywood star. Traditional studios still dominated film distribution, and streaming services were only beginning to produce large-scale original movies. Sandler's partnership with Netflix allowed him to bypass traditional theatrical releases. Instead, his films would debut directly on the streaming platform, reaching global audiences instantly. From Netflix's perspective, the arrangement made sense because Sandler's films consistently generated strong viewing numbers. The movies produced during this period included titles such as The Ridiculous Six and Murder Mystery. Critical reception remained mixed to negative, but the films performed extremely well in terms of streaming viewership. Netflix frequently reported that Sandler's projects were among the most watched movies on the platform. The streaming era effectively insulated Sandler from the traditional pressures of box office performance and theatrical reviews. Because success was measured primarily by viewership data rather than ticket sales, his films could thrive even if critics remained unimpressed. Then, in 2019, Sandler once again surprised audiences with a performance that dramatically changed how many critics viewed his career. In Uncut Gems, directed by Josh Safdie and Benny Safdie, Sandler played Howard Ratner, a chaotic New York jeweler whose compulsive gambling leads him deeper into financial and personal danger. The role was intense, stressful, and emotionally demanding. Sandler's character spent much of the film shouting, arguing, and desperately attempting to escape the consequences of his own reckless decisions. Critics widely praised the performance, describing it as one of the most compelling portrayals of Sandler's career. Many observers believed Sandler might receive major awards recognition for the role, though he ultimately did not receive an Academy Award nomination. Nevertheless, the performance significantly reshaped critical perceptions of his abilities. It demonstrated that beneath decades of broad comedy, Sandler had the capacity to deliver powerful dramatic work. Yet, even after the acclaim for Uncut Gems, Sandler returned primarily to broad comedic projects. Some fans hoped the movie would mark a permanent shift toward more serious roles, but Sandler appeared comfortable continuing with the style of filmmaking that had defined most of his career. Looking back across several decades, Sandler's career presents a curious contradiction. Few actors have achieved such consistent financial success while simultaneously facing such persistent criticism from film reviewers. Many of his movies receive low ratings from critics, yet they perform extremely well with audiences. Part of this phenomenon may be explained by Sandler's connection with a particular type of viewer. His movies often focus on exaggerated characters, simple humor, and familiar story structures. For audiences seeking straightforward entertainment rather than artistic complexity, these elements can be appealing. Another factor is Sandler's loyalty to his collaborators. Over the years, he has continued working with the same group of friends and comedians. This approach creates a recognizable style that feels consistent from film to film. For some viewers, this familiarity is comforting. For critics, it sometimes appears repetitive. Sandler's career also highlights the difference between critical evaluation and audience enjoyment. Film critics often emphasize originality, technical craft, and narrative sophistication. Many of Sandler's comedies prioritize accessibility and humor over those elements. As a result, critics and audiences frequently evaluate the same film in completely different ways. Despite decades of criticism, Sandler remains one of the most recognizable comedians in American entertainment. His films have collectively earned billions of dollars worldwide.
Even when individual projects receive negative reviews, his popularity with audiences continues to sustain his career. Over time, Sandler has also become somewhat of a paradoxical figure within Hollywood. He is simultaneously mocked by critics and admired for his longevity. Some commentators describe him as a comedian who discovered the simplest possible formula for long-term success: make films that audiences enjoy regardless of what reviewers think. In interviews, Sandler has often appeared relatively unconcerned with criticism. He frequently jokes about negative reviews and emphasizes that his primary goal is simply to make people laugh. Whether this attitude represents genuine indifference or strategic self-awareness is difficult to determine. What remains clear is that Adam Sandler has built one of the most unique careers in modern film. Few actors have maintained such a strong connection with audiences while remaining such a frequent target of criticism. The contrast between those two realities defines much of the conversation surrounding his work. As the years continue, Sandler's place in entertainment history will likely remain complicated. Some viewers will remember him as a comedian who delivered countless popular films that defined a generation of comedy. Others will view him as a performer who rarely pushed beyond the simplest comedic formulas. Either way, his influence on modern comedy is undeniable. From his early days performing stand-up routines with a guitar to his decades of starring roles in films and streaming projects, Adam Sandler has carved out a career that defies many traditional expectations about Hollywood success. The debate surrounding his work may never fully settle, but the longevity of his career suggests that whether critics approve or not, audiences continue to find something in Adam Sandler's style of humor that keeps them watching.